invited speakers today. You know, we live in a 24/7 world, and you know, in our daily lives and for American business, I would say you know, one of the most critical things today for all of us is speed, convenience, service, reliability. Those are critical factors. And you know, the post office has seen some migration, not a hemorrhage, some migration of first-class mail to people paying things online, but they've also been hit hard by the downturn in the economy, like every other provider of services and businesses in this country since the crash on Wall Street. They have challenges, but instead of rising to those 21st century challenges, you know, as other national postal systems have done this, it's actually happened. Let's talk about Switzerland for a second. Switzerland figured out, well, you know, a lot of people like to get junk mail, some people don't like to get junk mail. They've set up a system where you can have your junk mail held, scanned, you can virtually open it, you can say discard, open, or deliver if you actually want it delivered. But it saves the Postal Service from bringing a lot of weight and things to people who don't want it, and it allows people to choose. That is an evolution, applying 21st century technology, getting savings for the service, and providing a new service to your customers. You know, those are the sorts of things that the Postal Service should be thinking about. But the Board of Governors, who happen to have a supermajority of Bush holdovers, I believe are, you know, proposing things that are going to degrade service under the guise of what is very much an artificial fiscal crisis. Now, you know, we're seeing this processing center behind us. They're proposing to close and consolidate processing centers all across America, and it goes hand in glove with the idea of going to 5-day delivery. And I believe that that would begin the death spiral of the Postal Service. I believe that that would cause the profitable first-class mail to hemorrhage to other alternatives. Businesses that need more regular service would go elsewhere. You know, if you live in Springfield like I do, and on Wednesday you send a first-class letter to pay a bill over in Eugene, say it's due on Friday, under these new standards, and with the closure of this center, that bill is going to truck on up to Portland, get sorted, come back down at some point, but it might not, and especially if we have no Saturday delivery, get delivered until the next Monday. From Wednesday till Monday for first-class letter that goes from Springfield to Eugene. That is essentially a standard that the Postal Service had in 1775. Thomas Jefferson could mail a letter delivered by horse to his wife at Monticello while they were debating at the Constitutional Convention, and it would get there in 4 to 5 days. Under this new proposal, the letter would get there in 4 to 5 days. I don't believe that that is acceptable in 21st century America, and I tell you, it is going to drive customers away in huge numbers. Now they have claims of the savings they'll get with 5-day delivery and the closure of the centers, but actually the Postal Rate Commission, who unfortunately only evaluates and advises and tells the Board of Governors and the Postmaster that they're doing stupid things, does not have any mandatory clout over those people. They analyzed going to 5-day delivery. They said they underestimated the migration of people to other vendors, and they overestimated the savings. In fact, they say the savings would be about $1.7 billion a year. Well, if you look at the Postal Service's annual report, they have 14 lines of business, not first-class mail, but 14 lines of business, a lot of what people call junk mail, that lose money. How much do they lose? $1.7 billion a year. Well, how about perhaps modest rate increases on those so-called lines of business that lose money to get the same amount of savings that you would get by destroying 6-day delivery and those kind of services. Now think of a few of the people who are going to suffer. 300,000 veterans get prescription drugs delivered by mail on a weekly basis. 300,000 veterans. Now, what if that prescription here, mailed by Roseburg, has to go to Portland, and then it has to come on back down to Roseburg, to the veteran, or to Eugene, or anywhere else in my district, and it was mailed on a Wednesday, he or she is about to run out, they don't get the drugs till Monday. That might be too late. They're going to minimally probably have to go in and get an emergency prescription over here at the clinic, or find something else. 25% of seniors who are subscribing to these Medicare prescription drug plans get their prescriptions through the mail. Millions of disabled Americans and others with private insurance get their prescriptions through the mail. Think of the disruption and the uncertainty for those people. This will accentuate unbelievably the urban-rural divide we have in Oregon and across America for underserved rural communities that are just struggling to hang on. Those communities will in all likelihood lose their newspapers, and we'll hear about that. And I've heard from a number of community newspapers in my district saying this will be it. I mean, you know, this week's news, you know, 9 days from now is not going to work, and businesses aren't going to be wanting to buy ads in something that is delivered on such an untimely basis. And many other, we've heard from many other people in small businesses who've been affected by this. Now, there is an alternative. I introduced a bill this week, which has already been introduced in the Senate by Bernie Sanders, has 8 senators on as sponsors. There are a number of things that I said, and that may have puzzled some, an artificial fiscal crisis. Well, it is artificial because the Postal Service is being required, now this is a reach, to prepay health care benefits for people who haven't been born yet who might someday work at the Postal Service. They are supposed to prepay 75 years of health care benefits, $5.5 billion a year. There are people who haven't been born yet and certainly are not working at the Postal Service, and they're prepaying their benefits now. That's crazy. There's no other business in America that does that. There's no other agency of government in the United States of America that does that. Nobody could afford that. But that burden has been put on the Postal Service, $5.5 billion a year. And their own Inspector General says actually, even if you subscribe to the principle of prepayment, that's about 4 times too much. That it should be a much lower payment, and there's a whole question about prepayment altogether. Secondly, this is again a bit confusing, but you know, we used to have a government postal service. Now we have a semi-independent, somewhat entrepreneurial agency, whatever, the United States Postal Service. That happened in 1971. The government was supposed to pick up all the costs for everyone who worked before 1971. And supposed to pick up the cost of people who were combining military service with their postal service for their pensions. That hasn't happened. The estimates are that's $55 to $75 billion the Postal Service has paid out that they shouldn't have paid out, that should have been an obligation of the general fund of the United States, because we don't subsidize the Postal Service. They don't get a penny of federal appropriations, but they shouldn't be asked to be subsidizing another part of government, which is what they're doing there. So this bill would rectify both those problems. That gives the Postal Service a lot of breathing room over, say, a minimum of 5 or 7 years at current projected deficits, or even more, 10 years, to begin to evolve into something that will work long term. Yes, they need more flexibility on rates, and the Postal Rate Commission, and we should have that authority given. Right now, the Postal Service can only increase rates at the rate of inflation, and even if they have a so-called line of business that's losing money, like catalogs or something, they can't raise it 3 or 4%. They are limited to inflation. We should give them that flexibility. We should have a blue ribbon panel that gives the Postmaster General and the Board of Governors ideas about 21st century competition. Look around at other postal services around the world. Most of them are still doing 6-day. Most of them are profitable. They've dealt with these problems. We can deal with these problems here in the United States of America. And if we are going to look at closures of any parts of the system, and I got to say I have a lot of concerns about the way this will fall on small communities and that. And I've sent a number of individual letters on behalf of small communities. And I've also introduced a bill that Senator Merkley introduced in the Senate to say they can't close any post office where it's more than 10 miles to the next post office. You know, it should be done with a independent commission that evaluates it in a number of ways that don't just go to how much money does it produce, but also go to what does it support in terms of communities and business and commerce in this country, and what does it mean to these rural communities, and what would it mean if it's gone. You know, this is being done. This is not supposed to be political. This is all very political. Again, back to the Board of Governors being dominated by privatizers left over from the Bush administration. And just last point on privatization, it's a great thing to say, well, you know, this will all, you know, private sector will take over. Well, remember, the UPS and FedEx actually depend upon the Postal Service to do a lot of remote deliveries in rural areas. They can't afford to go there. That's one thing. The other point is I had my staff just look online. I said, okay, I want to send something right now, business size like this, 3 ounces, to my Washington office. It's critical. I want it to be there by tomorrow. Okay, Postal Service, $17.40. UPS, $56.66. And FedEx Priority Overnight, $53.52. Now I said, all right, it's not that critical, but it's got to be there by Monday. Postal Service, $4.95. UPS, $37.51. FedEx, $27.59. You know, and that's where they go. There are a lot of places they won't go, you know, there is no substitute, and it's obviously tremendously more expensive for people with small businesses and others. I've heard from people who do, you know, sell on eBay and everything else. With that, we're going to we'll get a few other speakers. My mayor, Christine Whiteburn. There she is. Okay, Christine.
I just want to take a couple of minutes to comment on the importance of this distribution facility to Springfield in particular, and to our entire area. You know, when you think of the Gateway area, you think of probably the Gateway Mall and the hospital, Symantec, Royal Caribbean, all of the big businesses, but the other thing you think of is the post office, because so many of us use it. I don't care what time of the day or night I'm here, it's busy. There are people who need to get their mail somewhere, and they need to pick things up, and they need to have a place where they can do that, and they know that it's going to get somewhere quickly. And this is the location that that's going to happen. I know that just here, it's also critically important for people, the business I work for, and particularly the hospital that's nearby here, and the medical facilities. They depend on this distribution center to not only get their billings out, but to get prescriptions out. There is a huge amount of prescriptions that need to be mailed from this area, and so it's very critical to have a distribution facility. And frankly, just the idea that when the discussion first came up, I thought, oh, that's probably post office in who knows where. And when they said the distribution center in Springfield, I thought, oh, for heaven's sakes, of all the bad ideas, that's got to be one of them. And thinking about someone who once talked to me about what you do to make a business better, well, what you do is you don't make your service worse, you make it better. Yeah. So the idea that they're making it worse doesn't make any sense. That's you know, you're going to doom yourself by doing that. So we're just so thankful to Congressman DeFazio for taking this on as a critical issue. It is so important to this community. It's so important for this area, and I want to thank you personally for taking that on, and to everyone who's out here tonight or today in the freezing cold to support this effort. So thank you so much.
President of the Oregon State Association of Letter Carriers.
Thank you, Peter. How's everybody doing? It's a beautiful day to be a letter carrier, right? You know? Beautiful sunshine somewhere up there. Like the congressman said, we've been doing this for 236 years. The Postal Service is older than the Declaration of Independence. We predate that by a year when the Second Continental Congress decided that there had to be some way to bind these colonies together. There weren't any telephones or faxes or telegraphs. They needed a way to keep this country together, and they did it by creating what we have today. We are part of the United States Constitution, which is important for everybody here to understand, because the Postal Service does not belong to the Postmaster General. It's not a red post office. It's not a blue post office. It's a red, white, and blue post office. It belongs to every one of you. It belongs to every single American. And so when they rolled out this plan and they decided they were going to change our delivery standards so that I could not deliver a letter across town or even across the street right here in Springfield in one day, that's wrong. And it's especially wrong when you think about that the public has had no input in this process. And you deserve it because it's your postal services. I'm just a letter carrier. I've been carrying mail for 27 years. I love my job. The people who work in that factory who get the mail to us to do it, they love their jobs. We're going to kill over 70 good family wage jobs when we shut this down. That's wrong. We need more jobs in America, not less jobs. So, the good news is there is going to be a public meeting about closing this plant that every resident in the Eugene-Springfield area needs to know about. That's going to be on Wednesday, December 28th. That's right. Leave it to the Postal Service for the busiest week of the year to have a hearing when everybody's on vacation, right? Okay? And it's going to be at Lane Community College at the Center for Meeting and Learning, Building 19, from 7 to 8:30 p.m. And then, through their magnanimousness, they're going to give you a whopping 15 days after that to put a public comment in about closing this facility. Remember, this doesn't belong to the post office. This belongs to you. So please show up on Wednesday, December 28th, 7 to 8:30 p.m. at Lane Community College, and let your voice be heard, because we want to continue doing what we've been doing for 235 years, and we want to do it with the rest of you, our customers. Thank you.
Owner of the Springfield Times, Creswell Chronicle, and 2 other mail products.
I'd like to thank the Congressman for having me here today. I do own 3 newspapers, Springfield, Creswell, and Bonita, and they are all dependent on periodical mail permits and getting the paper out basically the next day. We found out last week when one of our bags got misplaced at the Springfield post office how important it is to get the paper out. We get lots of phone calls. But this would absolutely sink us if this came to happen. We rely heavily on public notices for our newspaper, subscribers, advertising, the timeliness of getting the ads in. And before we even decided to start up Springfield, we own the paper in Burns, Harney County, which is the 10th largest land area. They only have 1 newspaper and basically 1 news source. And so if something like this happens, there's people all over that county that aren't going to get their news. And so, there are 75 community newspapers here in Oregon that'll be affected, and thousands nationwide. And so, it'll be a trickle down where we're all going to be affected by this. Thank you.
Talk about what it would mean to you.
Well, as a senior, I'm worried about paying my bills on time. Not all of us know how to use the computer. I can, but I'm very shy about doing certain things in the computer. I did not grow up with computers. I'm 70 years old, and a lot of seniors are that way. And people living in the rural areas, this is essential, basic service that they need. How are they going to get their mail? How are they going to get their prescriptions? How are they going to get, letters from the government. Like Social Security does not send email. I mean, they send me letters, and I get their notices through the mail. And most of us are like that. And I am really worried about us seniors, that we should do everything we can to not let this happen. Thank you.
Manager of the Duck Store. Go Ducks!
Go On a personal note, I really truly believe we need more visionaries in Congress than reactionaries. And on a second thing, there's nothing more America than the United States Postal Service. I grew up in a small coastal town called Nelscott, it's part of Lincoln City, and I just know that going down, getting your mail was part of the day. And I know it is for many Americans, and so forth. So I'm here today to represent the University of Oregon Bookstore, the Duck Store, an organization, a business that's been around for 92 years. Speaking from a business perspective, it doesn't make sense to close down this processing center that serves not only Eugene Springfield metropolitan area, but a greater southern Oregon region. Time is money, Peter, and you talked about that. And a delay in time both to send and receive mail can make a huge difference to businesses, a huge difference. Having to send a business check or an invoice from Eugene or Springfield to another city or to southern Oregon, to have to go to Portland, to have to go all the way back down to there doesn't make sense. And in a business sense, time is money. The Duck Store has built a sizable mail order business. The Ducks have done well, and the Duck Store has done well as well. And it is one of the ways that we send out our mail packages. We do use UPS, we do use FedEx, but we use, in a big way, U.S. Postal Service. And one of the advantages the U.S. Postal Service brings to us is this facility right here. We can take, because we get, right now, with Christmas time, the holidays, and of course a bowl game, people are really demanding that their mail order things either come to them, which they can't wait to get a duck item, or to some people they're sending it to. We bring our mail order things here to Springfield, to the processing center, so we can get out fast. If this place closes down, we will be disappointing people all over this country, and in some ways all over the world, because we actually use the Postal Service to send packages all over this world. So I'm here today to say it's false savings to close this processing center. It is important that it be here, it's important to our community, it's important to all of us. Thank you.
Any questions before we expire cold here? Any press? Yes?
Yeah, you bet. So I've seen a document that's already been passed out inside the building that says how many jobs would be either cut or accessed or something like that. Is this already done? And why is the public hearing coming after that?
I've got to say this is a very opaque process. I was talking to some employees back here, and they say no, they haven't been evaluated yet. It hasn't been done, but we received a notice from the post office addressed to me from the Postal Authority saying that it had already been done, it had already been reviewed by Portland, was now being reviewed by the Western region. They basically quoted some statistics from it, and then they said, oh, and we'll make it available to the public, or parts of it, a few days before Christmas. Well, if it's already done, the public should have an opportunity to comment on it longer. If it's not already done, then they sent me a letter that's not true. And so they're saying 3 days before Christmas, you'll be able to review the document online, and 3 days after Christmas, you can come to a celebration, and discuss what decision they're proposing. But there's a hard push going on from the Postmaster General, the Board of Governors, to push this plan in conjunction with the with going to 5-day delivery. Among postal bureaucrats, 5-day delivery is not a new thing. They've been pushing that since 1977, and Congress has forestalled it. It was a bad idea then, and that was when they were a monopoly with little competition. It's an even worse idea now when they have to compete and provide better service if they're going to continue to exist.
So why did they schedule the public hearing though for after? Is what I don't understand.
Because they don't care
you
what
know,
the public is.
They don't want our
Well,
input.
that's what management does.
Yeah, I mean, I think we have some senior management problems in the Postal Service, if I can say at least politely. And, you know, there are those, and I believe there may also be a political agenda here too. Like I said, 2/3 of the board are Bush appointees, including some very, very outspoken privatizers who are hostile to public sector employees, hostile to the public sector generally. And as I pointed out earlier, there is no replacement for the United States Postal Service. There cannot be one from the private sector. There can be some areas where the private sector would be happy to take over, where they can make money, but you know, you ask them to go a little distance out into rural areas, oh no, we can't do that. 45 cents?
What authority does Congress have over this? Can you stop?
Congress has annually since 1981 mandated that they maintain 6-day delivery. That right now is up in the air because it's always been part of the annual appropriations process, which is not yet done. So Congress could prohibit them moving to 6 days. Congress has total authority over, you know, to revise the Postal Service. It was created by Congress. Some of the problems were created by Congress. This $5.5 billion a year payment was created by Congress. We have it within our authority to fix this. There are some who are happy to let it go and deteriorate. And so, you know, Congress has to come together. I'd like to hear a little more from the White House too. I think this is the potential for a national crisis, and we need some leadership. And that's why I decided, you know, I kept waiting for the people on the appropriate committees to stand up and lead and get together and make some reasonable decisions. It didn't happen, and so on Monday when this crazy plan came out, I said, that's enough. I went to the floor. I was the only one there. I guess I stayed there on the weekend and spoke out.
Thank you, Peter.
Thank you.
Yeah.
What can be done then before the meeting on the 28th?
Huh?
What can people do before the meeting on the 28th?
Well, I would suggest, you know, that they contact the Postal Service, and I would contact the Board of Governors, the Postmaster General, their members of Congress, senators, the White House, and say, you know, we're really concerned that this seems to be like a very fast track to make these major changes, which are going to degrade our service to a point where we believe that'll cause even more loss of revenue for the Postal Service. People should be very actively involved. We should also nail them down on. We tried today to find out about this report. In fact, you know, there's a very, we think a gentleman who's doing a very good job, who is a customer relations liaison out of Portland. In fact, we talked to him. My staff talked to him yesterday and asked for permission to be on the property. He has a kind of an odd voicemail today that says he is unexpectedly and indefinitely out of the office. I would hope that the Postal Service isn't doing something to him because, you know, I think this is public facility and I don't think it would have been untoward for us to be over there, but I'm really very thankful to State Farm for allowing us to be on their property. Yep.
Response to the gentleman's question. One of the things the public needs to do, or anybody that responds to the speech, is that you need to arm yourself with questions that are pertinent to the debate that are not from the Postal Service's tagline. The wealth of information that you can obtain from respective postal unions or on the internet, such as information that we have here. A lot of that comes from the Postal Service's own websites themselves, historical data and what have you, pertinent data that is today. The Postal Service is not putting out. The Postal Service is feeding the public, feeding Congress for that matter, information that is flat out false and misrepresentative of fact. Arm yourself with that information so that when you go to the meetings on the 27th of Bend, the 28th here in Eugene, or the 29th of Salem, you can ask relevant questions of the Postal Service once they get their little dog home.
Okay. Yes.
Is there any information on where the prepayment funding is?
The prepayment funding is, you know, making the deficit look a little smaller. That's where it is. It's not, unfortunately, secure somewhere in a bank vault or a depository account that is earning interest for those people who are not yet born who might someday become employees. Who might get
If there's a Postal Service.
If there's a Postal Service, yes. So.
So let me ask the devil's advocate question. I think about my own communications with the world, and I've gone to a lot of online bill pay, and it's just hard to get through the mail. Why should I care that much about
Well, I think we already talked about some people will be critically impacted, veterans' prescriptions, seniors' prescriptions, other people who get prescription drugs, small businesses, our communities, people who take local community newspapers. We need to be losing jobs in this economy, and I believe it would have an overall very detrimental effect on the economy. I think this would start a real death spiral, and if you think we can do as a nation totally without a postal service, that's crazy stuff. There's no substitute, and there are areas where the private sector, I mean, I gave you the prices, that's for free, that's for easy stuff. Putting stuff on a plane that goes directly back to Washington, D.C., and it's still, phenomenally more expensive to do it through the private sector than the postal service, which also goes to my point. I think many Americans would be willing to pay a little bit more. We have by far the lowest postal rates in the world, and they're going to raise it a penny because they've been, because of a law that was passed back in the 70s that restricts how they can increase. There should be reasonable adjustments.
We have vote by mail.
Yeah, vote by mail. We have a letter from the Secretary of State. Tremendous implications and problems potentially for vote by mail in this state and other states.
They'd love to kill that. They'd love to kill that.
Also, your letter carrier, little known fact, is your first responder in the case of an anthrax attack. It's your letter carrier who will deliver antibiotics to every single address in the country. That doesn't get written up.
And your letter carrier can't be taken offline or interrupted like cell phone communications and internet. Your letter carrier will be out there.
That's right.
Service in this country that costs you nothing unless you use it. Is the American public willing to just give that away? There's a lot of people that don't have internet, they don't have cell phones, they're only in touch with communication with people or their loved ones, businesses or whatever. Is the U.S. Postal Service. There's people who occupy Eugene. The only way those people get in contact is to send a letter. If they want to get on the internet, most of them have to go to the library and wait in line to log on to use that service.
And in some other countries, their postal services provide secure internet kiosks at the post office. So again, 21st century adaptation to provide better service to their people. Sure, go ahead.
So we're talking about 70 jobs here, possibly 100,000 nationwide for postal employees. What's the rest of the iceberg? It seems like that's the tip, but when you take into account the small businesses, and has anybody calculated the overall cost as far as
the Postal Service says that people who are principally dependent upon or pretty much directly involved in mailing or businesses that relate to mailing is about $1 trillion in our economy on an annual basis. So that would be a pretty darn big hit if there's any substantial erosion of that across the country. And that's the ducks, Jim and others, and there's an awful lot. There's people who have no alternatives. I have coastal communities, and there's no UPS store. There's no, they get a drop box. That's it, that they can do. But there's no alternative. And we talked about the numbers too. So. Go ahead.
I wanted to say one more thing about you were asking what would happen with the 60 jobs. The so-called study that allegedly hasn't been done yet, but has been done, states 60 craft employees and 8 supervisory positions will be lost with the closure of this plant. That's a net loss. There is actually a lot more people who work in there. And what's going to happen is that's what the Postal Service feels that they will save by paying, but the rest of us get a choice to move to Portland.
Yeah.
Wow. So we're out of your community. We're no longer buying things in your community. In my case, I've already got property in my community, so I'm going to spend all my disposable income on renting an apartment up there.
Or a room.
And commuting.
Yeah.
How much money are they saving?
So I'm actually going to go, I have 2 things. I mean, this one I have it's something for the Coast Guard. I live on a boat. I have to mail, they only send things, they do not do e-communications. The whole government. So I've got to mail that. DMV, I prefer that to going in. And then I'm mailing a letter to the Postmaster General with suggestions about things he can do other than terminate, Thanks very much for being here. Appreciate it. Thank you all.
Thank you, Peter.
Thank you.
And also for your devil's advocate question, stop and think about it.